What if the biggest illusion in your life isn't failure, bad luck, or lack of discipline? What if it's the quiet belief that you have time? Most people live as if they have two lives. The one they're living now and the one they'll finally begin when conditions improve. When work slows down, when energy returns, when motivation strikes, when the schedule clears, that second life is always waiting. It starts next Monday, next month, next year, but it never actually begins. You know someone like this. The person who talks about getting in shape but hasn't stepped into a gym in months. The one who says they'll write the book once things calm down. The one who plans to learn a new skill when life is less chaotic. Maybe that person is you. You're not confused about what to do. That's the frustrating part. You've done the research, you've watched the videos, you've made the plan, you know you need to train, study, build, call, show up. The clarity is there, the action isn't. I'll start tomorrow. That sentence feels harmless, responsible even. But over time it becomes a pattern, and patterns become identity. Days turn into weeks, weeks into months, months into years, and the version of you that was supposed to emerge never does. There is a Japanese concept called Ichigo Ichie. It translates roughly to one time, one meeting. It comes from the tea ceremony tradition. The idea is simple but brutal. This moment will never exist again. Not in this exact form. Not with the same people. Not with the same circumstances. Even if you repeat the ritual tomorrow, it won't be this moment. It's gone once it passes. Now apply that to your life. The workout you skipped today will never be recovered. Not in its original form. The conversation you cut short because you were busy is gone. The Sunday you didn't visit your father is buried. We act as if time is renewable. It isn't. It only moves forward. Your brain, however, doesn't experience time that way. Neuroscience shows that we consistently discount future consequences. This is called present bias. Immediate comfort feels more urgent than long-term reward. The brain prefers relief now over benefit later. The couch beats the gym. The scroll beats the project. The distraction beats the difficult conversation. And every time you postpone, you strengthen that neural pathway. Procrastination isn't random. It's trained. The more you delay, the easier it becomes to delay again. This is the story of Dylan. Dylan was 29, intelligent, capable, not lazy, not incompetent. Everyone around him believed in his potential. He worked in accounting, stable job, predictable routine. He told himself it was temporary, just until he launched his finance app idea. The idea had been alive in his mind for 3 years. He had notebooks filled with concepts, wireframes sketched, market research done, domain purchased. But the code? Zero. He always decided to start seriously on the weekend. He also had a fitness goal. He weighed 95 kilos and wanted to get down to 75. He paid for a gym membership for 8 months. He had gone 4 times. Next Monday he would get serious. He wanted to learn Japanese. He bought the course, downloaded the apps, opened lesson 1, never returned. When work calmed down, he would dedicate himself. And then there was Jessica. They had been together 4 years. She was patient, supportive. She believed in him, but she was tired because Dylan was physically present but mentally absent. At dinner, he scrolled. During conversations about the future, he deflected. When she suggested trying something new on the weekend, he said he was exhausted. We'll do it next time. Next time rarely came. His father lived across town, a widower for 5 years, quiet, aging, alone. Once a week he called. Son, want to have lunch Sunday? Not this week, Dad. Let's do next weekend. Next weekend usually disappeared into streaming shows and idle scrolling. Dylan wasn't malicious. He just believed there would always be more time. His life ran on a weekly ritual. Sunday night, promises. Monday, I wake up early. I'll train before work. I'll code in the evening. I'll study before bed. He set alarms, laid out gym clothes, left his laptop open on the project file. Monday morning, the alarm rang at 6 a.m. 10 more minutes. 10 became 40. He rushed to work, skipped the workout. At the office, he stayed busy but not productive. Emails, notifications, messages, quick hits of stimulation that felt like work. At 6 p.m., he returned home tired, sat on the couch for 5 minutes before starting the project. He opened YouTube. One video became 10. By the time he looked at the clock, it was 10:30 p.m. Too late now. I'll start earlier tomorrow. Tomorrow repeated. The painful part? He knew exactly what he was doing. He wasn't uninformed. He wasn't unaware. He just couldn't seem to act. That tension builds slowly. You feel it in quiet moments. When you look at yourself in the mirror, when someone asks how the project is going, the guilt accumulates. But guilt without action turns into numbness. One Friday night, everything shifted. Jessica walked into the living room. Dylan was on the couch, half focused on a show, bag of chips beside him. "We need to talk." Her tone was different, not angry, tired. "Do you remember when we started dating?" she asked. "Of course. You were full of ideas, energy. You talked about building something meaningful, traveling, growing. You made me believe in that future." She paused. "It's been 4 years. You're still in the same job you hate. The app hasn't moved. You're still postponing everything." He tried to explain, to defend, to say he was planning. She cut him off. "You postpone training. You postpone your project. You postpone visiting your father. You even postpone us." Silence filled the room. "I can't keep dating a promise," she said quietly. "I need to date someone who acts." That sentence landed harder than any motivational quote ever could. Dylan sat alone after she walked away, paused screen, empty room. He was 29. What had he actually built? A concept in his head, an unused gym membership, a strained relationship, a father he barely saw. That night he didn't scroll. He stared at the ceiling, and for the first time, he felt the cost of tomorrow. It wasn't abstract anymore. It was concrete. Lost moments, lost days, lost versions of himself. The illusion cracked. The truth was uncomfortable. He wasn't stuck because of complexity. He was stuck because of delay. Tomorrow had become a hiding place, and he finally understood something simple. The life he wanted wasn't waiting in the future. It was bleeding out in the present. Part 2 will focus on what he learned next, the neuroscience of why procrastination feels stronger than logic, and the practical system that began to rebuild his identity from the smallest possible action. Saturday morning, Dylan woke up with the same heavy feeling that always followed a hard conversation. Not panic, not sadness, something worse, clarity. He knew he needed to change. Not in a new week, new me way, in a real way. But the frustrating part was this. He didn't need more information. He had already read productivity books, watched discipline videos, downloaded apps, made schedules, bought courses, tried planners, tried motivation. And still, the same pattern kept winning. So he did something he hadn't done in a long time. He reached out to someone who wouldn't flatter him, Kenji Nakamura. Kenji was a Japanese man in his late 60s who had once mentored Dylan during a programming course years earlier. Calm, precise, the kind of person who never sounded urgent but somehow made you feel urgency anyway. Dylan messaged him on impulse. "Sensei Kenji, it's Dylan, can we talk?" The reply came quickly. "Tomorrow, 10 a.m. Park Cafeteria." Sunday morning, Dylan arrived early. He sat outside, coffee in hand, looking at people walk by like they were moving through a different world. Kenji arrived exactly on time. Same upright posture, same calm steps, same quiet smile. They sat, Kenji ordered green tea. What brings you here? Kenji asked. Dylan tried to summarize, but his voice kept breaking into details. So he just dumped the truth on the table, the job he hated, the app he never built, the gym membership he paid for and ignored, the Japanese course sitting unused, the relationship slipping away, the father he kept postponing. Kenji listened without interrupting. No judgment, just attention. When Dylan finished, Kenji asked one question. And you know what you need to do? Yes, Dylan said immediately. I know exactly. I need to work on the app daily, train, study, be present with Jessica, visit my father. Kenji nodded once. Then why don't you do it? Dylan stared at the table like the answer might be printed on it. I don't know, he admitted. I always think tomorrow will be easier. Then tomorrow comes and I do the same thing. Kenji took a sip of tea and let silence sit long enough to sting. Dylan, he said calmly, you think your problem is laziness. It isn't. He leaned forward slightly. Your problem is that your brain is doing exactly what it was designed to do. That sentence changed the room. Kenji explained that inside your head are two systems in constant conflict. One is ancient, fast, emotional, survival-driven. It wants comfort now, relief now, pleasure now. It avoids discomfort automatically. Call it the limbic system if you like, but the label doesn't matter. The behavior does. The other system is newer, slower, strategic. It can plan, delay gratification, think long-term, imagine consequences. This is the part that makes goals, writes to-do lists, buys gym memberships, dreams about a better life. But here's the problem. The fast system is stronger in the moment because it reacts instantly. It doesn't argue. It just pulls you toward what feels safe. Netflix feels safe. Scrolling feels safe. Food feels safe. Starting a project feels uncertain. Training feels uncomfortable. Difficult conversations feel risky. So the brain does what it's built to do. It chooses immediate comfort over future reward. This is why procrastination is so common in intelligent people. Intelligence helps you plan, but planning doesn't beat impulse. Impulse beats planning unless you change the environment and the starting cost. Dylan listened, but part of him felt doomed. So I'm just wired to fail? Kenji's expression didn't change. No, you're wired to conserve energy. You can work with that instead of pretending it's not true. Then he said something Dylan didn't expect. Willpower is not your solution. That sounded wrong. Every productivity guru sells willpower like it's the missing ingredient. Kenji shook his head. Willpower is limited. It drains throughout the day. When you use it for work, for stress, for decisions, you have less left for your personal goals. That's why most people start strong on Monday and collapse by Thursday. They rely on a resource that runs out. So what's the alternative? Kenji wrote one word on a napkin. Neuroplasticity. Your brain changes based on what you repeat, Kenji said. Whatever you do often becomes easier to do again. That includes procrastination. Every time Dylan delayed, he trained his brain to delay faster next time. His nervous system learned discomfort equals avoidance. Over time, avoidance became automatic. Kenji continued. You can't fight an automatic system with occasional motivation. You need to build a different automatic system. Dylan asked the obvious question. How long does that take? Kenji answered without drama. Long enough to matter, but shorter than you think. Then he gave Dylan the first real key. Stop trying to change your life. Start by changing your starting point. Dylan looked confused. Kenji explained it this way. The brain resists tasks that appear large. When Dylan thought, build the app, his brain pictured hours of work, uncertainty, bugs, frustration, failure. The limbic system sees that and pushes away. But if Dylan thought, open the project file, the brain doesn't panic. That's small, concrete, low threat. So Kenji introduced the simplest system Dylan had ever heard. Choose one habit, Kenji said. Only one. Dylan started listing multiple goals immediately. Gym, app, Japanese, sleep, focus. Kenji raised his hand. 1. Because trying to change everything at once creates constant resistance and drains willpower. The brain detects overload and goes back to comfort. One habit small enough that you can't negotiate. Then Kenji wrote, 2-minute rule. He explained it without hype. Any new habit should take less than 2 minutes to start. Not to complete, to start. This is the difference between people who move and people who plan forever. Because your brain doesn't fear the habit, it fears the starting friction. If you reduce friction, behavior starts happening. Kenji gave examples that landed instantly. Working on the project becomes open the project file and write one line of code. Training becomes put on workout clothes and do one push-up. Studying becomes open the app and learn one word. Calling your father becomes dial the number and let it ring. 2 minutes is small enough that the brain doesn't mount a full resistance response. And once you start, something important happens. Momentum, Kenji said it plainly. Starting is the hardest part. After you start, you've already won half the battle. Dylan pushed back. One line of code won't build an app. Kenji didn't argue. No, but it will build something more important. The identity of someone who starts daily. That word mattered. Identity. Most people try to change results directly. I want to lose 20 pounds. I want to launch a business. I want to stop procrastinating. But the brain doesn't shift from outcomes. It shifts from repetition. Repetition creates identity. Identity creates behavior. Behavior creates results. Kenji wrote on the napkin, identity to behavior to results. Your goal isn't the app, Kenji said. Your goal is becoming a person who touches the app every day. That's why small actions are not small. They are votes. Every day you write a line of code, you are casting a vote for the identity. I am a builder. Every day you avoid it, you cast a vote for, I am someone who delays. Over time, identity becomes stable, and stable identity makes behavior easier. Dylan sat back. This was the first explanation that made procrastination feel solvable. But he still had a question. Why am I disciplined at work, but not for myself? Kenji smiled slightly. Because work has immediate consequences. If you don't perform, you get pressure, shame, even job loss. Your brain sees threat, so it acts. Personal goals usually don't punish you immediately. If you skip the gym today, nothing explodes today. If you don't code today, no one calls you out today. The cost arrives later, quietly, in regret, and the limbic system doesn't respect future regret. It respects immediate reward and immediate danger. So Kenji told Dylan something sharp. Stop relying on future consequences, create present rewards. Dylan expected some complicated reward system. Kenji kept it clean. The reward can be internal. The reward is the feeling that you did what you said you would do. The reward is keeping the chain unbroken. Kenji's approach wasn't about hype. It was about basic human wiring. Action produces dopamine. Dopamine produces drive. Drive produces more action. Most people wait for drive first. That's backwards. Kenji said it in a way Dylan couldn't unhear. Motivation comes after action, not before. If Dylan waited to feel motivated, he would wait forever. But if he acted for 2 minutes, motivation would appear because the brain rewards completion. Even a small completion, especially a small completion because it feels achievable. Then Kenji gave him the offer. A 30-day challenge. Dylan felt his stomach tighten. Challenges usually triggered his old pattern. Intense start, collapse later. Kenji anticipated that. This is not a transformation challenge. This is a starting challenge. One habit, every day, for 30 days, no exceptions. Dylan chose the app because it was the most painful symbol of his delay. Kenji refined it. Not work on the app. That's vague. Vague habits die. Specific habits live. So they defined it. Open the project file and write one line of code every day for 30 days. Kenji looked Dylan in the eye. Can you do one line on bad days? Dylan nodded. Yes. Good. Because you're not building software, you're building a new self. Then Kenji warned him about the moment that ruins most people. The stumble. There will be a day you miss, maybe you get sick, maybe you drink, maybe you forget, and your brain will say, you failed, you broke it, start again next Monday. Kenji tapped the table once. That's the old lie. Stumbling isn't failing. Failing is staying down. Then he gave Dylan a rule that mattered more than perfection. Never miss twice. One miss is a mistake. 2 misses is a new pattern, so the goal wasn't to never fail, it was to never spiral. Kenji finished his tea and said something that pulled the conversation back to the deeper level. You came here for productivity, but what you're really fighting is absence. Dylan looked confused. Kenji continued. You postpone tasks, but you also postpone people. You postpone your father. You postpone your relationship. You postpone being present. That's why Ichigo Ichie matters, Kenji said. Not as a romantic idea, as a warning. This moment only happens once, and procrastination doesn't just delay tasks. It kills moments. Dylan left that cafe with something new in his chest. Not excitement, not motivation, clarity. That night, he went home and did something he hadn't done in years. He spoke to Jessica without performing. He sat beside her, put his phone down and said, I'm sorry. I've been living like life starts later. I don't want that anymore. He didn't promise a complete change overnight. He promised something smaller and real. Every day I'll work on the project, even if it's one line, and every day I'll be present with you for at least 10 minutes with no phone. Jessica didn't look impressed. She looked relieved. I don't need big promises, she said quietly. I need you here. That night at 9 p.m., Dylan opened his laptop. The project file was right where it had been for months. He took a breath, wrote one line, saved it, closed it. It felt almost ridiculous, but it wasn't. Because he did what he said he would do. He texted Kenji, Day 1, one line. Kenji replied instantly, Good, don't break the chain. And for the first time, Dylan understood what he had been missing all along. Change doesn't start with a new personality, it starts with a smaller starting point. Day 1 felt almost symbolic. Dylan wrote a single line of code. Nothing impressive, no breakthrough, no new feature. Just a small, clean function defining a variable. He saved the file, closed the laptop, and sat there. For years, he had associated progress with intensity, with long nights, with bursts of motivation, with dramatic transformation. But this felt different. It was quiet. There was no adrenaline, just completion. That night, he texted Kenji, Day 1, one line. The reply came quickly. Good, don't break the chain. The first 3 days were easy. He was still fueled by the conversation, by the discomfort of Friday night, by the fear of losing Jessica, by the shame of how long he had delayed. On day 2, he wrote 6 lines. On day 3, nearly 20. Momentum was on his side, but momentum is fragile. By day 4, the old pattern started whispering again. He came home tired. Work had been chaotic. Meetings ran long, emails piled up. He felt mentally drained. He sat on the couch. The TV remote was closer than the laptop. The voice came. "Not today. You've had a long day. You deserve rest. You can double up tomorrow." This voice didn't sound dramatic. It sounded reasonable. That's what makes it dangerous. He almost believed it. Then he remembered what Kenji had said. You don't need motivation to do 2 minutes. He stood up, walked to the desk, opened the file, wrote 1 line, closed it. Total time, less than 2 minutes. It wasn't productive. It wasn't inspiring. But he didn't break the chain. That night, something small shifted. He realized the battle wasn't about effort. It was about negotiation. Every time he negotiated with himself, he lost. When he removed negotiation, action became simpler. Days 5, 6, 7 passed. A full week. He texted Kenji again. 7 days, didn't break. Kenji replied, "You're not building an app, you're building discipline." That line stayed with him. By day 12, the novelty had completely faded. This is where most people collapse. There's no excitement, no visible result, no external praise, just repetition. On day 12, he got home at nearly midnight. It had been a brutal day at work. He was exhausted, his brain felt fried. He changed into pajamas and lay down. Then it hit him, the project. The clock read 11:47 p.m. He had 13 minutes before the day ended. The old voice came back stronger this time. "You're tired. 1 day won't matter. Start again tomorrow." This was the critical moment, the kind that doesn't look dramatic from the outside, but defines everything. He sat up, walked to the desk, opened the file, wrote 3 lines, saved, closed, 11:55 p.m. He went back to bed with a small smile. He hadn't defeated exhaustion. He had defeated tomorrow. That distinction matters, because procrastination is not about laziness. It's about postponement, and postponement feeds on negotiation. The more you negotiate, the weaker your internal authority becomes. But when you act without debate, you strengthen something internal. Self-trust. By day 18, something interesting happened. He woke up on a Saturday with no obligations. For years, Saturdays meant sleeping in, scrolling, drifting. But at 9 a.m., he found himself at the desk without forcing it. Not because he had to, because it felt natural. The habit had begun to root. This is how neuroplasticity feels from the inside. It doesn't feel like rewiring. It feels like reduced resistance. He worked 2 hours that morning, not because of discipline, because momentum had taken over. Jessica noticed. She didn't say anything dramatic, she just watched him with a different expression. Relief, because she could see the difference between intensity and consistency. Consistency is quieter. On day 23, the first real test arrived. He went to a barbecue with friends. He drank more than he should have. Got home at 1 a.m., collapsed into bed. The next morning he woke with a pounding headache. And then he remembered. He hadn't written his line. The streak was broken, 23 days gone. The voice returned immediately. "You ruined it. There's no point now. Start fresh Monday." This is the trap. Most people don't fail because they stumble. They fail because they interpret a stumble as identity. Dylan lay there staring at the ceiling. Then he remembered Kenji's rule. Never miss twice. He got up. Even with the headache, opened the file, wrote 1 line, saved it, closed it. Then he texted Kenji. "I broke the streak yesterday, but today I'm back." Kenji replied, "Duh, you didn't break. You tripped and stood up. That's the real discipline." That moment was more important than the previous 23 days combined. Because perfection creates pressure. Recovery creates resilience. Perfection is fragile. Recovery is strong. Day 30 arrived without fireworks. The app wasn't finished. His body hadn't transformed, but something deeper had changed. He had become someone who acted daily. The difference between having a goal and building an identity is subtle but powerful. Before, he was someone who had an app idea. Now, he was someone who worked on his app every day. That shift changes everything, because identity reduces friction. When something aligns with who you believe you are, you don't debate it, you just do it. After 30 days, he met Kenji again at the same cafe. Green tea, coffee, same table. "You did it," Kenji said. "Yes," Dylan replied, "but it doesn't feel dramatic." "It shouldn't," Kenji answered. "Real change is quiet," Dylan smiled. "It's strange, I don't feel like I built much, but I feel different." Kenji nodded. "Because you stopped waiting." Then Kenji introduced something new. "You're ready to add another habit, but with a warning. Not 10 habits, 1. So Dylan added training. 2 minutes. Put on workout clothes, do 1 push-up, that's it. It felt ridiculous at first, but that's the point. Ridiculous habits bypass resistance. Within a week, 1 push-up became 5. Within a month, 5 became 20. 3 months later, he was training 30 minutes a day without forcing himself. Not because he chased motivation, because he removed negotiation. Over time, visible results started appearing. He lost weight. The app reached 60% completion. Jessica relaxed. His father became part of his weekly routine, and that last one changed him more than anything else. Kenji had reminded him one day, "You think productivity is the goal. It isn't. Presence is." Dylan realized he had been postponing people as much as projects. He called his father and invited him to lunch. His father showed up dressed carefully, like the day mattered. They talked for hours, no phone, no rush, just conversation. Dylan felt something he hadn't felt in years. Connection. He realized something uncomfortable. If he had continued postponing, those moments would have disappeared. His father wouldn't be around forever. Time wasn't theoretical anymore. Ichigo Ichie. This meeting only happens once. That phrase stopped being poetic. It became practical. 3 months turned into 6, 6 into 12. 1 year later, Dylan was sitting at the same cafe with Kenji again. The app was live. 500 users, not viral, not glamorous, real, functional, generating income. He weighed 78 kilos. Jessica had said yes to his proposal. He had lunch with his father every Sunday. No streaks broken for months. No dramatic lifestyle hacks, just repetition. Kenji looked at him and asked, "What changed?" Dylan thought carefully. "I stopped living in the future." He used to believe life would begin when the app launched, when he got in shape, when everything aligned. But life had been happening the entire time. He just wasn't present for it. Most people believe change requires a powerful moment, a breakthrough, a revelation. But transformation is not an event, it's accumulation. 1,000 small actions that compound. A neuroscientist at Stanford explains habit formation as neural pathway reinforcement. The brain is energy efficient. It automates repeated behavior to reduce cognitive load. When you repeat a small action daily, the brain strengthens that pathway. After 60 to 90 days, it becomes default. You no longer fight yourself, you operate. That's why small habits matter. They remove friction, they remove drama, they build identity. Oxford research on procrastination shows it is rarely about laziness. It is emotional avoidance. We delay tasks that create discomfort. The key is reducing that discomfort below the brain's resistance threshold. 2-minute starts do exactly that. They make starting too small to resist, and once you start, the brain rewards you. Dopamine reinforces action. Action reinforces identity. Identity reinforces future action. The cycle reverses. Dylan used to believe he needed a better plan. He needed a smaller starting point. That's it. Not intensity, not extreme discipline, not motivational hype. Consistency, small, daily, imperfect. There was one more thing Kenji taught him. You cannot do everything. Early on, Dylan tried stacking habits too quickly. Application, gym, Japanese, social life, career upgrades. He burned out. Kenji corrected him. Ichigo Ichie is not about cramming life into a day. It's about being fully present in the one thing you chose today. Presence is selective. If you try to optimize everything, you fragment yourself. Fragmentation creates stress. Stress leads to avoidance. Avoidance leads to delay. The cycle returns. So Dylan simplified. One primary focus, supportive habits. Time for people, space for rest. He stopped trying to become 10 versions of himself at once. He became one consistent version daily. And here's what surprised him most. Life became more satisfying, not because he achieved everything, because he stopped betraying himself. Self-respect grows when action matches intention. When you say you'll do something and do it, even if small, you trust yourself more. And self-trust changes posture, voice, decisions. It changes how you show up in relationships, in work, in solitude. The biggest shift wasn't the app. It wasn't the weight loss. It was internal. He no longer identified as someone who starts tomorrow. He identified as someone who acts today. That difference is invisible from the outside, but decisive from the inside. Now here's the uncomfortable question. How many moments have you buried in later? How many workouts postponed? How many calls delayed? How many projects stuck in draft? How many Sundays skipped? You think you have two lives, the current one and the future one that begins when you're ready. But readiness is created through action, not waiting. You don't need to revolutionize your life today. You need to choose one small action and execute it. 2 minutes. Open the file, put on the shoes, dial the number, write the sentence. That's it. Not for a year, for today, because today is the only unit you actually control. You will stumble, that's guaranteed, but don't stumble twice. Perfection isn't the goal, continuity is. The difference between people who transform and people who fantasize isn't talent. It isn't luck. It isn't intelligence. It's daily action without negotiation. Life isn't measured by dramatic achievements. It's measured by repeated presence. Your father won't be here forever. Your child won't stay young. Your partner won't wait indefinitely. Your health won't remain unchanged. You don't have infinite time. You have this moment. Ichigo Ichie. One time, one encounter, one day. The question isn't whether you know what to do, you do. The question is whether you'll stop negotiating and start today, not tomorrow.